Leah Whiston and Sue Clarke formed the Queensland group Woman Up Queensland in 2023. Since forming Woman Up Queensland, they have started their own YouTube channel, Woman Up Queensland, and hold monthly speakers' corners in the Brisbane CBD. In the past 3 months, the trans activists have become more aggressive in trying to shut down these monthly meetings, where women and men come along to speak about how gender ideology is impacting on them and the deterioration of women's rights. Last Sunday, the trans activists stormed the event while Leah was speaking, and what resulted was a barrage of aggression and abuse by about 40 trans activists. And now I would like to introduce Leah Whiston and Sue Clarke from Woman Up Queensland. You have the floor, women.
I guess I could start because before the event, there were quite a number of things that went on with the police. Do you want me to go through that, Leah?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we went through Brisbane City Council to get what's called a notice of intention to have our event at a different location to prove that the trans crazies were harassing us. So we secured that, but the Monday, so that was in late June, but the Monday, what was it, the 16th of July, which was the July event was the 21st of July. I got a phone call from the police to say that the trans, as they call them, pride activists, also lodged a notice of intention for the same location, same day and same time. So that meant that we would have to share the entire area with them. So that meant they could get up in our face because they had approval, basically, to harass us, which I wasn't very happy about. I guess none of us in Woman Up was very happy about that. So we had to accept that. Then on the Wednesday, I got a call from the police again to say that the location that we secured, which was Redcliffe Place, was now another group. They gave it to another group. So that meant we didn't have a location, but they said that Queen's Garden Park, where we ended up, was available to us if we wanted that because we had an approved notice of intention. So we took that, but then they said, oh, we're going to have to tell your friends that you're going there. So they've got the option of going to Queen's Gardens Park. And once again, I said to this other officer, that just means they're going to get in our face. But on the Tuesday...
Can we just emphasise that point, that they know what these people are like against us? Yeah. We'd swapped locations and they said, we're going to tell the people who are harassing you, the men who want to come and be violent and aggressive to you, we're going to tell them exactly where you are.
Yeah.
Sorry, it
blows your mind.
Unbelievable to me. Yeah.
Tuesday, before I got that Wednesday, I actually sent an urgent email to the Minister of Police saying, can you stop this? You know, it's going to be potential harm towards us. This ridiculous thing that multiple groups can lodge a notice of intention at the same time and all be granted the same area. And I actually said, would you do this if an Israeli group was at this location, would you approve Free Palestine to come in and give them full reign to just full out aggression? Didn't get a response. So on the Thursday, because of what I was told on the Wednesday, I thought I'm going to ring Brisbane City Council because I wanted to know what in the legislation allowed for multiple groups, multiple locations, same time, same day. And so I rang the Brisbane City Council, and it's called the Notice of Intention team, and spoke to the guy there. And I just said, what is it in the legislation that allows you to do that? And he goes, we never book multiple groups in the same location. He said, we just don't do that. I said, well, why would the police ring me and tell me that you had approved a notice of intention for the trans activists? And he said, I don't know. I don't know why they did that. So then, of course, that raised alarm bells for us that someone in the major events team was feeding the information to the trans activists. So I rang the policewoman in, well, I didn't actually ring her, I wanted to speak to someone else because we didn't have a very good conversation on the Monday. But the guy that I wanted to speak to was available, but they decided to put me through to her. And I just said, I just got off the phone from Brisbane City Council and they said that they never approved the notice of intention for the trans activists. And then she went off the phone. I thought she was going to check their paperwork, but she didn't. She came back on the phone. She said, well, you never had approval either. And I said, well, we did. I've got evidence of that. And also when I spoke to the guy at Brisbane City Council, he said, you lodged your notice of intention first, that was accepted. They lodged their notice of intention after us, so therefore it was rejected. But she was argumentative and then said basically, Brisbane City Council don't know what they're doing. So I just said to her, because she told me that she had put forward a change to the legislation to stop this from happening, and it had been knocked back by government multiple occasions. And I was just talking to her about the legislation, and she said, I'm not going to argue the legislation with you. And I said, I'm not arguing. I just want to know why we are unsafe because of this loophole in the legislation. And then all of a sudden, it was a normal conversation. She raised her voice and said, I'm not going to tolerate you yelling abuse down the phone at me. And I just said, are you kidding me? What abuse? I've not raised my voice. So then I knew to the people around her in that area, she wanted to make out that I was yelling abuse at her down the phone. And I said, is this phone being recorded? And she said, no. And I just thought, oh my God, I can't believe this. And anyway, she did say we would have police in attendance on the Sunday, because on Monday she said, we're not the protest police, and business as usual get priority over coming to a protest. And I thought, isn't that business as usual to protect the public? So I had a feeling something was going to go wrong. She was quite angry with me for finding out that it wasn't approved, or she appeared to be. And then so we got to Queen's Park at 11:30, an hour before the event, because in June the trans activists got there and they took our spot, even though they didn't have a notice of intention. And so it was an unauthorised gathering on their part, but they took our spot. And the police went over to them and asked them to move, and they'd said no. But we got there early to secure the spot. And when we were there, we were quite surprised as time went on. There were no trans activists, no police, which was unusual. And then we saw what looked like trans activists coming down to the park. And one of our people said as they walked past Redcliffe Place, the trans activists were there. So they hadn't been told that we went to Queen's Park for some reason, but they sent their scouts out to find us. So we knew that they were going to come. And then because there was no police presence around 12:20, myself and one of our group, we went down to Brisbane headquarters, which is a couple of streets away. And there was a plainclothes guy behind reception, and I just said, our event is about to start. We've been promised police presence, and there's no one there. And then a police officer at the end of reception said, oh, what's the name of your group? And I said, Women Up Queensland. He said, well, there have been allocated police, but they're out doing other things. They'll turn up when they get a chance to turn up. And I said, we're at risk of harm. And he said in a conceited manner, all Queenslanders are at risk. So then David and I walked back to the park, and I saw, because the trans activists have their legal observers, which is ridiculous because they're the ones that break the law. And so went into the park and we got set up, and then Leah got up and spoke. And Leah, I'll leave that to you now because this is where you come in.
Well, it just went as planned, didn't it? But the thing that I didn't expect was the direction that they came from. So they actually approached us from behind. And, you know, it's done for a reason. It's done for maximum intimidation, because coming from behind, obviously, it's going to be more. I mean, I don't particularly find them scary, but at the end of the day, these are 6 foot odd tall burly blokes that could probably knock you out with a punch. So, yeah, they came, they conquered, they took our space. It was absolutely symbolic of what these men do, which is just override a woman's personal boundaries without a care, with their flags. And the police did absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. At one point, when I noticed that the police were there, I walked up to them and the police actually started walking away from me.
There were actually two, wasn't there, where the previous month we had about 10. So they under-resourced police. So it did appear that this was punishment for finding out that the NOI wasn't approved. So for only 2, and then back to you, Leah.
Well, I just read Teresa's comment. They don't give a rat's ass about women. They don't. I've been in before to the police after I was accosted by an infamous transvestite in Brisbane, and they literally told me to come back with a physical injury. So that was when I really started to see that there was something going wrong with the police here. Obviously, it's been going wrong for years, but it was just my experience when I found it. When I was pregnant and accosted by this transvestite in public. So as we were talking to our friend Kaylee, who was a police officer for 20 years, the trans activists, we expect them to turn up and be aggressive. We do. I mean, unfortunately, that is what they're going to do. What I didn't expect was the level of compliance to their side from the police. They wouldn't even look at me. They would just look straight through me when I was asking for help. And I just found it completely, other than dystopian, just absolutely depressing.
The one surprising thing was because they were making so much noise, they were very threatening. And then, Leah, when you went up to that police officer and he said, oh, they've got an NOI, they're allowed to speak. They weren't speaking.
Well, that's their right to be there, he said.
But he did speaking too. It wasn't speaking. They weren't speaking. They were intimidating. The noise the level of noise. They
were calling us fucking cunts and bigots. Sorry for swearing, but that's what they do. And I just can't believe that this is allowed to happen in a public place. Why aren't women allowed? Why aren't women permitted a peaceful assembly, which is what literally the paperwork that we applied for, which was a public assembly? Why aren't women allowed that? There's something very, very deep happening that is just infiltrating all institutions. But the one I find the most scary is how the police have been captured by this. It was just
quite pathetic, wasn't it, when they were in the face of the police and to see them cower to these men, like they there was nothing that the trans activists could do. The trans
you've got the main guy who was hitting a police officer with his flag, and you've got the police officer saying, okay, that's enough. Come on, you're being really aggressive. Just stop it now. And this is all recorded. You've assaulted me. You've assaulted a police officer. And then him bragging about assaulting a police officer and the man just trying to calm the bloke down. And, if roles were reversed and it was one of us doing that, I mean, we'd still be in a cell now.
We would, yeah.
So, so that's what we say. Like, we are just a group of normal people who have seen what's going on. We can't unsee it now. That's why we get out there and do it. Because what option do we have? If we're able to do it, which I am, I mean, what's our alternative? I can't allow that. I can't allow my daughter to be growing up in a world where men have this kind of power over her spaces, where men have power over her boundaries. Yeah, it makes me want to cry just thinking about it.
And that blue head guy, when he was assaulting the police officer and he pulled him up and he goes, well, you're going to charge me? And the police officer goes, no. And you think, my God, police are being abused and they're cowering like these people have got so much power. And that's the scary part. They fear no one. They're really unpredictable. And it was just unbelievable to see that these trans crazies have so much power over the police. And you just think, where's this going to end? How's it going to end? But we did persevere. Not everyone got to speak. And
well, no, hardly anyone got to speak. There was still a few men who wanted to speak, who I know a couple of the men that do speak every week, that they didn't speak, and we didn't have to have a choice. We had to wrap it up, but we had to wrap it up in a way that made it look like we'd finished, because we couldn't, I mean, I couldn't bear the thought of just going. So we did what we could, didn't we?
And Leah, you approached the police and said, what are you going to do about it? And then they said, well, we had to move somewhere else. And Leah said, why aren't you moving them? And the senior police officer goes, well, they've got that spot now.
Well, they're there now. And I just thought that sums the whole thing up, doesn't it? Well, they're there now. Well, men are in our spaces now. Well, they're in our changing rooms now. Oh, they're in our toilets now.
They're there, so, yeah. But also they said when we went into the new part of the park, which wasn't far from there, but far enough away from them so we could hold our event, and they said they would hold the line. And within, 60 seconds, they'd broken that line. And then there were police everywhere. Like it was just such mayhem. It was unbelievable. But it sent home a message to the trans activists that they can do exactly whatever they want. They can push women out. We had to make sure that our equipment didn't get damaged. And the things that they called us was just disgraceful. And I said to one of the police officers, I said, have you read the Peaceful Assemblies Act? And I don't know if he was being sarcastic when he said no. And I thought, how could you not when you're doing this job? And then I said, it's about maintaining public order and public safety. And I said, that's not public order. But it was like talking to a brick wall. The priority.
It was like talking to other cult members, talking to the police. Yeah, it was all very odd. You know, it was all very odd. It was like being surrounded by overgrown toddlers.
I reckon the police were told not to do anything to the trans activists, because like there's this footage also, Leah, you put it up in a separate clip where the police, I think there's 6 police in a line, and that blue head nut goes up to each one of them. He puts his hand over his mouth. And I tried to hear what he was saying on the footage, and I'm not sure, like a fascist piece of shit I could hear with a policewoman. And then he went to a male officer and a dog. So I'm not sure, but I'm not sure if he was calling them that or he's telling them to do their job in moving with the fascist piece of shit and dogs. I couldn't work that out. But the police just stood there. And it was just, it's embarrassing for those police officers. The footage that captures this, it's just so embarrassing for the Queensland Police Force. But but on Thursday, I did get a call from a senior sergeant.
Sue gets a phone call and her heart sinks, wondering what they're going to say. But let's end on a positive note, and let's end on what they said to you.
Yeah, so they wanted to know, this senior sergeant wanted to know how everyone was after Sunday, spoke to me about the event, promised an increased police presence at our next event, which is the 25th of August, and undertaking that if the trans activists ever behave like that again, they'll take action. She said that she was also responding on behalf of the police minister. So I think he must have, because we warned him, we warned the police officer in headquarters what was going to happen, that probably egg on face, basically, left us vulnerable, and they did nothing. But it was a very positive call on the Thursday from this police officer. And I did follow it up with an email telling, explaining my experience with a couple of, well, no, it was just one person in major events, and how she lied when she sort of raised her voice and said that I was yelling abuse down the phone. Hopefully they'll check that phone recording. But the thing is, the police may give us this undertaking, but Labor could step in and stop any undertaking they've given us. And we know Labor is 100% pro-trans. So we just have to wait and see at the next event.
We have to wait and see at the next event, and we have to take them on their word and accept that there's going to be more. But this goes so deep that it's going to take years and years to unravel. You know, this is just, I don't even know how to put it in words, how scary this is.
Because they really believe they are untouchable. The way police were treated, the way we were treated was bad enough, but the complete disrespect for the police, it was like they were just cowering to these activists. Must have been seething deep down, the police, because they wouldn't have.
I don't know if they were, if they just wanted to get the job done and go. To me, it seemed like. But our next one is on 25th of August. So anybody around, come down. You don't have to speak, just come and support and just be with us.
And we're not giving out the location until probably the Wednesday before we're the 25th, because we don't want them, even though the Brisbane City Council said that they will not give multiple groups the same area, just to prevent them from, whoever else will step in and say, okay, you can legally be there. And if they can legally be there, then it's a green light to abuse us. And that's exactly what it was. But pretty strange though, wasn't it, Leah, when there were no trans activists in the park and we saw the scouts come into the park, and that man that came up and spoke to David and said, is this where the anti-turf protest is?
And he said, what's a TERF? And this guy said, trans, I don't know. He didn't even know what he was there for. And then when it was full force, he was going for it with the rest of them. You know, you give misogynists an excuse to come and shout at women, they're going to take it with both hands.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is, I guess, people in the park, because it's a popular park and it's where Treasury Casino has their accommodation. So it was just out the front of there, because the entrance is on the park. So, you know, we all know that when they carry on like that, they're actually piquing the public, but they think that they've got the full support of the public. But there were also two young men walking through the park and saw what was going on, and they came over and that blue-head guy, they tried to rip his flag out of his hand, and then they turned around and blamed us for that. This is what you do because you come out in the park and you speak about this issue. This is what you do. So they believe that we are the ones that are, and, you know, they always talk about violence, that, you know, but what violence? Because if there was any violence towards trans people, the media would be full of it, because the media loves them and you don't hear about anything. So, yeah, but anyway, it was interesting, to say the least.
Well, it's a shame that the shine was taken off of the actual speaking event of women, but this stuff has to be highlighted and people have to see what we're up against in Queensland. I mean, I don't think the people, my friends back home in the UK, really know how bad it is.
Yeah. So, but with the last 2 months, like May and June, the police were really good, really supportive. And there was such a difference in the attitude of the police, because even in the one in June, the head police the sergeant or whatever, he said that, you know, they were looking at using powers that they don't often use. So get this event in July, and I can only put it down to this policewoman I spoke into major events, and she's got an enormous conflict of interest. And, you know, you hear about the corruption with the police, but when I was talking to her and she made out that I was yelling abuse down the phone, it really shocked me. I just couldn't believe someone could do that. A police officer would do that.
No, I just read Teresa's comment saying only women officers will help us. But the women were not helping at all. There was a woman there and she honestly looked like she didn't want anything to do with me. Like I was bugging her by asking for help. It was very strange.
Yeah. And I was dealing with a policewoman, and I actually said to this person that rang us in an email, I said, I believe she's got a conflict of interest. So, because what I was told, the other person that I was dealing with, and Leah, you've dealt with people in that area, but this guy, this police officer said, I'm moving on, you'll be dealing with such and such from now. And I'm thinking, she's corrupt, she's got a conflict of interest. How the hell can we work this out with someone that is going to, you know, do the wrong thing by us, that they don't care, that they put us in the position of being so vulnerable? And there were two, like, we had Kaylee got knocked to the ground, and we've got another woman in our big, an important part of our team who got hit in the head. So, and that was because the police didn't hold the line, not with Kaylee, but with, I won't give her name, but yeah, she got hit in the head, and because the police didn't hold the line, they were scattered everywhere. So this blue head guy was just running rampant right beside us, and he hit this person in the head. It was quite a hard hit too. So it's on the footage. What will they do to us? Will it take someone getting severely injured or even killed before, you know, the government and other authorities start to see that these people are insane?
Well, even then it would probably be recorded as a woman-on-woman crime. So I doubt that would even help. That's
true. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, we've got our next event on the 25th of August, which will be interesting, and hopefully the police will increase numbers. And yeah, but we don't think it's going to stop the trans nutters anyway, because, you know, they completely disrespect the police. So they'll continue to do what they do.
That's okay. Even if there's 1,000 of them, if the police hold the line, and we can have our event, and women who have prepared time and effort into writing something to say can actually get the chance to say it, that would be really marvelous. So we'll aim for that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was quite an experience. I had a gut feeling that it wasn't going to be good on the Friday, but I really expect the police to be so cowardly. That came as a big surprise, that they just stood there and watched and said they've got a right to speak when they're yelling and abusing us. A right to speak. That wasn't speaking, and it wasn't public order, and they were a threat to public safety. So, yeah. And we've had about 23,000 views of the footage now. It's not a lot in the scheme of things, but hopefully it's piqued a few people that have seen it.
Yeah, and a few people that might come down to the next one as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a few people saying that they'd like to come along, maybe not be in around us, but to sit back and watch what goes down. Yeah, so that's our story from Sunday. Almost a week.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for having us on.
No worries. Thank you very, very much, Leah Whiston and Sue Clarke from Women Up Queensland. I completely agree with you that I don't know how we get the genie back in the bottle after this. I really don't. how do you enforce boundaries, right? Just normal boundaries that we used to have. Anyway.
Yeah, because this is overtaking
problem.
schools. So
Yeah,
children,
that's right.
young children are being told to deny what they're seeing with their eyes. They're being
Yeah.
told that they can, obviously they're being told they can change sex. They're being told, how do you put that genie back in the bottle? And it's going to be a
Yeah.
generation, it's going to take generations, surely.
I hope not. I suspect that for some of them, once they actually become sexually active, they'll be like, oh, it does matter.
Mm.
Because I think quite a lot of activists, they're not actually, well, you know, they're not engaging in normal adult intimacies a lot, which is why they have so much time on their hands. Anyway, thank you so much.